Thank you all for being here and welcome to this session, Funding the Dream, about um, applying for and securing funds for programs for children, youth, and families in your parish. Um, Folks who are here live know me, but in case you're listening or watching this later and you don't, I'm Allie Colp. I'm the Youth and Family Ministry Coordinator for the Diocese of Nova Scotia and Prince Edward Island. And there are great participants here, but I also have Colleen Dowe, who works for Nova Scotia Health as a Community Health Board Coordinator.
Mhm.
Yes.
Right.
Um, to talk about a grant program that they have. And we'll also talk about a few different things that you might be able to apply for or different funding options for you. But before we get started with that, I'll just acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people, and that this treaty is covered by the treaties of peace and friendship, a treaty that wasn't about a transfer of land, but was about what was then a new and continues now as an ongoing relationship between settlers and Indigenous people in this place. Um, I I always like to think about something to offer as part of a territorial acknowledgement to make it a little bit more meaningful for that moment. Sometimes it's about, whatever we're going to talk about in that moment or, something that's happening more broadly in the world. And before this started, someone was saying to me that it's a warm day today, and that just like lifts everyone's spirits a little bit. And I've been thinking about this the past couple of days that Mi'kmaq months are not exactly the same as, the calendar that we follow. And each block of time is called something about what's happening in nature at that time. So I don't actually know what it is right now. If I was a more prepared person, I would have looked that up. So if you're watching this later, I will look it up and I'll put it in the little notes section below this video or audio. Um, but I think there's so much that we can learn from thinking about time and the passing of time based on what's happening in this place. So yesterday here really felt like the first day of spring. The first day of spring on the calendar was weeks ago. But yesterday, my kid came home from school and didn't come inside right away. Um, and there were lots and lots of people out walking their dogs. And it felt like yesterday, time turned in this place in a particular way. And there's so much we can learn from Indigenous people in all places, but for us, especially Mi'kmaq people, about how to see time in that way. So I encourage you to go look up the months, go look up the seasons and different ways that they talk about the times of the year. Okay, I'll also open us with a prayer. So let us pray. Holy and generous God, we thank you for the opportunity to gather this evening online in all of our respective places. Be with us in our conversations tonight. Be with us in our hoping and dreaming and planning for the various ways that we can serve children, youth, and family in our communities. Help us to love them the way that you call us to love them and the way that you love them. In your name we pray. Amen.
Yeah.
Okay, so this session will be, this won't be surprising to either of you, Chris or Maxine. This session will be pretty informal. That generally is how I work. But Colleen will tell us a little bit about wellness funds, and then I'll talk a little bit about Say Yes to Kids, which I think you both are familiar with, folks who are watching later. Hopefully there'll be lots of new information for you in all things. And then I can talk a little bit about some diocesan funding things and Anglican Foundation more generally. Um, but for sure, also, if you have questions or things that you want to share about funding, about your programs, about whatever, that will certainly add a lot. So Colleen is here. I asked Colleen to come speak about wellness funds in particular because they are like a super local grant program. And I think that's it's pretty uncommon. Like I can't actually think of another thing. It's really uncommon to have a local grant program that also exists like across the board for us, at least in Nova Scotia. I don't know if there's an equivalent in Prince Edward Island, but Like people in different parishes across Nova Scotia can apply to this through the same form, but their application will be considered by people within their community. So I think it's a really cool opportunity for our churches to apply for things. But I think lots of people in churches think that they can't apply for things like wellness funds, that they can't apply for, funding things that aren't explicitly for churches. Um, I'm on our local community health board, and like I have reviewed wellness fund applications. And when I thought, oh, maybe we can apply for community roots, I met with Colleen to find out if we were eligible. Like a lot of people just think that we aren't. So, Colleen, could you please tell us all about wellness funds, what they are, what they're all about, all the good things?
I can. First, just to explain how the local bit works, the community health boards are all across the province. So in Cumberland County, where we are, there's 3 community health boards. And there's another 32, so total of 35 province-wide. So if you go into the wellness grant applications or the community health board web page, and you can just Google Community Health Board Wellness Grant, and it comes up pretty easy. Then you can find your board. So depending where you live, there's a map. So it's either central, northern, eastern, or western. And then within those zones, there's more community health boards, and that's how you would apply. Everything is online, which I know stresses a lot of people, but it's an easy application. They're not asking for a lot, and definitely not asking. And Allie has reviewed a lot of wellness funds, so I think she will agree. Brevity is your friend. So sometimes when people are writing things, they think they want to sound really smart and use like it's the project itself is the most important thing, so what you're doing. The other thing that's really important in the application, and then I stop talking about the application, is the budget page. So making it clear what you want the money for. So if you wanted it for play groups, making it clear that we want money for this much food to feed X number of children over a certain period of time. So that they can see where their money's going. And the other thing that helps with, we usually get more requests than we get money. So sometimes they'll fund you partially. Okay, so, and often we'll call and ask, but sometimes we don't have time for that just because of the way that it works. And it's the volunteers that pick the recipients. It's not the staff that picks the recipients. So that's important. So the wellness funds, you can apply for up to $3,500 per wellness fund. So if you live in an area, so Allie, if she's doing work Cumberland wide, she could apply to all 3 CHBs, and that could be $3,500 per CHB. Chances of getting the full amount probably slim, especially in the small communities. But you can apply to more than one board if you're servicing more than one area, or if your catchment area takes in more than just your own small community. The funds are for projects, so it's not for equipment or capital items. However, you can spend up to, I think it's $1,300 on equipment or capital items if it's part of the wellness fund. So an example of that, because that gets muddy for a lot of people. Last year, one of the schools applied here to do a cooking competition for their students, and they wanted Instapots to go along with the program. And then they hosted 6 different sessions with 4 different teams doing this cooking, and that the amount that they got for Instapots, which I think was $800, just augmented, like it helped the project go. But it wasn't just about the project. So if you applied for a sign, for example, they would say no. Or if you applied for a wall or to have something rebuilt, then that won't go. It's got to be very project driven. That makes sense?
Yep.
And the other thing, I guess, is you have to be able to accept a check and write checks. So if you're in a position that you can't do that, you'd have to partner with somebody that can. So you don't necessarily have to be a registered nonprofit, or anything registered, as long as you've had a bank account for more than 6 months. And if you don't meet that criteria, usually there's somebody that you can partner with. So I don't know who's in your community, but up here, maybe if Allie didn't meet that criteria, I know that they do, but maybe you could partner with Allie even you know, like and maybe she'll say no because she might be like that. But you can partner with somebody that can be your banker, basically. So that would work. Up here, and I think I speak for most communities, the less barriers, well, actually always, the less barriers, the better. So although it's a church and it's a program that would include a religious component, it has to be welcoming we would want it to be welcoming to as many people as possible. So, and I know Allie wrote that in, that it's open to everybody in the community, regardless of denomination. And that would be an important bit to include. The other thing, trying to think of anything else. If you've already applied for one, which I don't think would be the case with this group, but if you've already applied for a wellness fund, you have to apply for something different. So even if it's kind of the same thing, so if it's the same program, you'd have to change it a little bit so that it's either connecting to a different group of children or adding more youth in, or targeting a different idea. So maybe you applied for one last year for this kind of program, and this year you really want to do it again, but you want to add an anti-bullying thing. You know, so as long as there's a different spin on it, you can apply year after year, but the project has to be somewhat different. What else? The project should be done within a year. So when you apply for the funds, right now the applications close May 6th, and once it's closed through June, we'll probably do the selecting, and typically in September, I think that's when most boards would be awarding across the province. Usually the end of June, I would hope you would get word whether you've been successful or not. As soon as you've heard you've been successful, you can spend the money. So you don't have to wait to get the check, but you can't spend the money until you've heard you've been successful. So that's kind of an important point. And up here, I try to call as soon as possible, especially because summer comes. So, and most people can kind of fund themselves over the summer from another pot and then take it in September. And I'm trying to think, I can't think of anything else that I think that's pretty much it is. There's something else, Allie, that I'm not considering. Well, partners are good. If you have partners that you work with, it's really good to include them. Because we are small and they don't have, like, none of us have a ton of funds to give away. People that work with partners tend to do less duplication and have more success with projects. So if you are working with projects or partners, just write them in. So that could be another church, your women's auxiliary group, if you have one, like anything that's a partner. And there's a spot for filling in partners. If you're working with schools, if somehow, or your municipality, sometimes you work with the municipality to get space, you know, then just include that because it strengthens your application.
Just one piece that I'll add is that every parish, I think every church probably, but definitely every parish would have like its own bank account. So a parish would definitely be eligible to apply in that regard. But like a committee of a parish, then you would like, not every committee would have its own account. So that would be a time that, you know, you might have to apply through the parish a little bit differently, but structurally it's there for every parish to be able to do this in some capacity for sure. And I will just say, just in case anyone in a parish that's doing community roots is listening or is on this call right now, that application that I'll submit will go from the diocese, so you'll be listed as a partner. But if you were to do a day camp later that wasn't with Community Roots, that would be a different project because you would be doing a day camp on your own or with local partners instead of with a diocesan body. One piece that I forgot is it's really helpful to contact your local CHB coordinator about your application.
It's just going to say the same thing. Yes.
Um, so for example, we're applying for Community Roots into the local CHBs where camps are happening just for like a little extra money for snacks and whatever. Um, so I had a really lovely meeting with the CHB coordinator in East Kings, I think. Hopefully she's not watching this and is going to be annoyed at me. If you are, Michaela, I'm really sorry. Um, so that when her CHB reviews the application, if they have questions, she knows a little bit more about our program than just is included in the application. So when the health board that I'm part of, when we review applications, I ask Colleen 1,000 questions that aren't covered on that application. And sometimes there are organizations that haven't done that reach out. So Colleen will say, I don't know. And we could call people to ask those questions, but um, everyone knows how work on committee goes. Like a phone call takes time that you just might not have. So it's just a really easy way to give your application a little bit of edge, especially if you're not already connected to your health board. And the coordinator contact information is all on that website, which I'll send a link to this recording out to all of you, and I'll include I'll include the link to that website, and then you can look at that map that Colleen talked about and see the application right there. The application is really easy, and it's being reviewed by regular people. So you don't have to worry about sounding super duper intellectual or using really technical language because that's not the audience. It's not being read by, I mean, there might be finance people who happen to be on a CHB, but it's not like you're sending something off to FMD or, a finance committee of people. Like it's just a group of people who care about community wellness.
And it's important. Sometimes people include in the budget other lines. So just remember, this is about the project that you're working on. So the church might have $5 million in another account, but if you're applying for $1,000 to run the camp, then it's just about how much it costs for the camp. Because we have had people send us whole big statements, and it didn't help because we're thinking we only have this much money and you have that much money. So it's really about the project. That's important.
And actually, Colleen, that's a really helpful thing to note for church people because a lot of church grants ask for your entire budget for your parish. So don't send that for wellness funds.
No,
Definitely no.
no. If you're going to attach anything, attach a picture of happy children.
Yeah.
Like that would be
Unless you happen to be applying to the Spring Hill, Oxford, Amherst, and Region one, because I'm very nosy and I would love to see all of those documents. But
don't do
it's not going to help your application. That's just helping my little nosy need.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Allie. I think you basically did explain it this way, and Colleen did as well in talking about the partnership. So like for Community Roots, our parish is one of the ones. So would our application that you're sending in, would that mean we're partnered with the other two that are in the valley? I assume we're all in the same
You're
health board?
not, actually. Yeah.
Wow. I don't know anything about where I live. Annapolis is probably too far away, isn't it?
Annapolis is too far away. So Kentville and Wolfville are in the same CHB.
Okay, so we're partners.
So I'll list both those organizations as partners. If the timeline of this application was a little bit later and we had a little bit more planned of, what the community involvement pieces might be for your week of camp, those might be folks that we would include as partners on that application, but we just don't have that yet. And I would rather leave it blank than just make a guess at who might be involved. 'Cause what if they then find out?
Yeah, don't do that.
So,
Thank you.
oh, Colleen, I don't know if you, I think I said that like community health boards are about like community health. So that's the angle to think about when you're applying is, what are the principles, what are the factors of community health? And on the website that I'll include the link to, you can see what the priorities are for the health plan for your region. So those are helpful things to highlight, I think, in your applications.
Yeah, social determinants of health are big on right across the board. So if you think about social connections, building relationships, mental wellness, like all of the things that you do for kids line right up in that, I would say. I haven't seen your program, but I think that that would be accurate.
Yeah.
And this one I would include coping skills. That's a really big thing now. Coping skills. And when you put kids in a room, you're developing coping skills.
That's true. Big time.
Yeah.
Okay. And if you're considering applying for a wellness fund, for a new program, for sure you can reach out to me, in like my work capacity, because I can resource and support you in that program, and then that's a partner that you can list. So just a thing that you can think about. Don't list me unless you ask me, but you can list me if you ask me. I'll always say yes. Speaking of saying yes, the next thing we'll talk about is say yes to kids. So say yes to kids is completely different in how you go about getting money than wellness funds. Say yes to kids, probably many of you will be familiar with this already, but it's an annual campaign of the Anglican Foundation of Canada that started in 2021, I think, maybe 2022, as a response to the pandemic. So the initial hope was to raise funds to support programs for children and youth as we moved out of the pandemic. And then the pandemic continued for a lot longer than we thought it was going to. But the campaign was really successful. So they've continued it, and now it's just an annual thing that happens. So the way that your parish can participate in that is on the Anglican Foundation of Canada's website, which I'll also include a link to. There's a whole Say Yes to Kids section, and there's a form. I think there's a form that you can fill out if you've already got like a program in mind. Or you can contact Michelle Hauser, who's their like consultant for this program in particular, to say, hey, we're interested in this, but we don't really know what to do. Do you have any suggestions? She's a really, really skilled fundraiser and communications person. So she can definitely help you kind of like hone in on what it is that you want to do. And then the way that you get the funds is it's very similar to Coldest Night of the Year, if you've ever been involved with that before. So your church would be kind of the organization that kind of hosts the walks generally, I think. And you get like a peer-to-peer fundraising page that you can share. You can do like fundraisers in your church locally, and feed all the funds through the Anglican Foundation. There's three really big advantages to fundraising through Say Yes to Kids rather than just doing kind of fundraising on your own. The first is that Michelle is an incredible resource. So she has lots of ideas, recommendations, and tools that she can provide to you to, how do you ask people if they'll give money? We, in the parish of Amherst, a few years ago, we raised $15,000 for the local youth development center. We could not have done that without Michelle saying, you can actually just write a letter to people asking if they will give money. And she was just really helpful in lots of other ways as well. Another piece is that there often are matching grants through Say Yes to Kids. So I don't know what the plan for it is this year, but in the past, if you raise $1,000, they have matched that with $1,000. And $1,000 can seem like a lot of money and is a lot of money. But if you do multiple fundraising things and you reach out in lots of different ways, you can get $1,000 a lot easier than you might think. And then you get a free $1,000. Like, how incredible is that? And then the third advantage is that your program will be on the Say Yes to Kids website. I'll promote it through diocesan channels because it's all part of, you know, this platform, this campaign together. So people who maybe aren't local to your parish, but have an interest in whatever the particular program you're doing, they might make a donation because they care about the thing that you care about. So yeah, it's a super easy thing to be part of because you can kind of do whatever you want. And you know, Michelle also helps put together kind of a case for support. So she'll put together a thing that kind of talks about, you know, like what your program is in a way that makes it like really appealing and exciting for people to make them kind of want to support you. But you don't have to like fill out a grant application or things like that. So the pressure is off of that in a way, which is kind of nice. The pressure is on in that you have to be a little bit active in getting the money, but when you have all of those supports, it's a lot easier than kind of going from nothing. Other funds also exist kind of internally to the diocese. I know they've been working really hard on making a single application. So sometimes what happens, we have a number of funds like the Growth for Ministry Fund or the Church Extension Fund or all of these various things. And people apply for the one that they've heard about, but it might not actually be the most relevant one. But because that's the application you filled out, sometimes they're a little bit tied. Like they can't just forward an application on if that's not what you've applied for. Or maybe they can forward it on, but then you haven't provided the information that that particular fund wants. So the goal is to change that so that you just send one standard application and then it goes to whatever like fund assessment committees or whatever they're called. It goes to whoever it's relevant to. So then you get like the most possible consideration. I haven't applied to that before, but I've applied to the Church Extension Fund and Growth for Ministry. And both of those applications were pretty straightforward as well. Church Extension was a little bit more complicated. And the Church Extension Fund often is thought about as being for buildings, but it really is about how you can extend your ministry in different ways. So when you think about it in that way, that kind of opens up more possibilities. Like we applied for community roots through that and we're funded. And that's certainly not a program that's about buildings. So you can be creative sometimes in how you think about those things, but with a single grant application, you won't have to worry about that. You can also sometimes regional councils have little pots of money. They don't always, but sometimes they do that can get tapped into for things. Or even like it's not super common, but some parishes have little bits squirreled away for various things. So don't be scared to just ask if there might be funds for things, because more often than you'd think, there just are not huge bits of money, but a little bit of money here and there that that you could use for things. And if you're trying to fund, let's say hypothetically, like a full week of day camp, that's not a small amount of money. But if you want to have an ice cream social, that's not that much money. So you can, you know, just ask the question of your parish council to say, is there space for this? Even if it's not a thing that's in the budget. Sometimes parish council knows what's up or knows that, you know, there's someone who will make a special donation if they get asked to do something like that. So that was an aside thing that I just thought of, like just asking often can be helpful. And the reason that I like piece this particular thing together is completely unrelated to this. I saw a thing once about if you're in public and your kid goes missing, the instinct when you lose your kid is to like, it's so shameful. Like, I don't want anyone to know that I have lost track of my kid. So I'm like, I'm just going to quietly look for them. But actually what you need to do is be loud. Be as loud as you can. I'm looking for Simeon. He's 4 years old. He's this tall. He has long blonde hair. He's wearing a blue t-shirt and gray sweatpants. He's got an orange hat on. Like, just be really loud and say the same things over and over. And the same thing can kind of be true when you're looking for money for a thing. Like, just be loud about it. Not loud in the, oh, my church has no money for children, but in the, we really want to do an ice cream social, a church picnic, a family barbecue, an outing at the lake, whatever. Yeah, we're just trying to figure out how to fund it, how to make that happen, because we think that it will be so great for families to be able to get together, to connect in a meaningful way, to do all the things that you want to do. But the more you talk about it in that loud, not loud, obnoxious, but in that clear, public, visible way, sometimes doors open. So just like a tangible example that isn't losing your kid, in Amherst, we do these community suppers. And, they started not super small, but they started a little small and have kind of grown. And like now things are like lots of people come. And suddenly the Multicultural Association like called us up. They didn't call us, they emailed us. But they called us up and said, hey, can we do something together to like celebrate a cultural event around your community supper? So we had a Lunar New Year celebration, which was incredible. And then like the same week that we had a meeting about that, the town emailed to say, hey, we know you do these community suppers and we would love to partner with you on one. Which just like has felt so incredible as the people who are involved with it. But I think really shows that the more visible something is, people can't say, hey, that sounds awesome if they don't know that you're doing it. So just be loud about it. Share it all over social media. Tell everybody about it. Because sometimes you'll just catch the right ear. One other funding thing that I will tell you about is, so I talked about Say Yes to Kids, which is through the Anglican Foundation, but the Anglican Foundation also has a regular grant application process. So applications through that are received, I think it's twice a year. And your parish can apply, but the application goes through the diocese. So you send the application to a diocesan committee and they like review it and they work closely with the foundation. So they know what kinds of things the foundation is looking for in an application. They review it, check it out, make sure you've got all the information that you need. And then that application goes to diocesan council to sign off on it. Because the diocese only has, I think it's 3 spots to apply in a year. I should have been more prepared and found out the timeline of that, but I forgot to do that. I think there's a May 1st and a July 1st. I think those are the 2 deadlines for the foundation. But yeah, they fund all kinds of things. So again, lots of people think of the foundation as funding buildings or funding, upgrades to your hall or whatever. They've funded a lot of heat pumps. But they also fund programming, and like lots of community grants or broader grants. They care a lot about partners. The Anglican Foundation is a foundation about Anglican churches in Canada. So they are actually fine if you're just an Anglican church doing a thing without partners. They wouldn't, they wouldn't think less of an application that involved partners, but that's not something that they look for in particular. So if you wanted to apply for something like getting a Sunday school off the ground, that would be a really good thing to apply for. Like the scale might be a little off. Say Yes to Kids might be the better choice for you on that. But if you needed a bit more money for a very specifically Anglican thing, the Anglican Foundation is a great way to go about that. I had one other thought in mind and it's fallen off. There's also local community recreation grants that you could be eligible for. I am not an athletic person by any stretch of the imagination. So for a long time, every time I saw the word recreation, I thought, oh, yikes, that's not for me. But recreation doesn't just mean sports things. All kinds of activity and program things are considered recreation. So learn from my mistakes and know that recreation grants might apply to you even if you're not dribbling a basketball or kicking a soccer ball down a field or whatever sports people do. Those are often a little bit more specific to a region or have like specific requirements. And I tried to get some information for this, but when I was in touch with a person, the information just wasn't quite available yet for this year's. But I can include some information, some links to where you can find information about those. The one in particular I was looking at was about recreation and culture. So, there really are all kinds of things out there. Also, depending on where you are in the diocese, some local areas have trusts that fund particular things. So for example, in the Hubbards area, there's the Aspatagan Heritage Trust that funds all kinds of things. They just care about that area and want to give money to make things happen there. So it's worth, getting in touch with your municipal councilors are often people who have a good sense of what little pots of money might exist that you can tap into. Because yeah, there are all kinds of things that you never know until you ask about. So definitely asking your municipal officials is a good support. Okay, those are all the things that I had on my list of things to talk about. Oh, actually, this is not my list, but I just thought of it. This isn't the time of year for it, but through the summer and the fall, it's good to do some thinking and dreaming about what you'd like to see your parish do for children, youth, and families. And talk to the wardens of your parish and find out what the budget process is like. Because just because something hasn't been included in a budget doesn't mean that it couldn't be included going forward. But like all the other things, they can't include it or consider it if they don't know what people might be interested in or what might be possible. So do some thinking and dreaming and loop those folks in. I know that lots and lots of church budgets are really tight. So just because you have a conversation doesn't mean that the money is just going to open up in the budget. But again, it's that like being loud about what it is that you want to do. Help bring people on side. Because then even if there's no money in the budget, then you've brought more people on board to the vision of what it is that you want to offer. And the more people that are on board, the more people that are excited about it, the more energy there will be, which will help bring things together. The other parish council thing I'll say, and then I'll stop thinking of last things to add and just ask if there are any questions, is that many applications will look for a reference to meeting minutes where you got approval to apply. So loop your parish council in when you want to apply for things. Even if it's not required to have that, it's just a really good practice to just have them know what's going on. And if you're working with partners, it's important to like be really clear and communicative with them about what you're applying for, who's responsible for what. If you weren't part of the Teamwork Makes the Dream Work session, definitely check out that recording because Jillian had some really good advice for how to have those conversations about money, to just make sure you're really clear and on the same page about what money you want to get and what specifically you will do with it if you get it. Yeah, like have those conversations up front rather than, getting into a sticky situation and trying to navigate it after. So those are all of the thoughts that I have. I hope that this wasn't like an overwhelming, like, oh, there's so many things to apply for and it's so much work, but instead, like a little insight into like in this particular time in the world, it can feel like there's just so little available. Like we have to do more things with less money, but there actually is still abundance. There's lots of opportunities and there's lots of different ways to access funds or resources. If you know about it and you know how to go about getting it. It's not a magic solution. Just knowing about it doesn't make the money fall into your pockets, but it helps to know. And in any things that you're considering applying for children, youth, or families, you can always connect with me to help you with grant applications or anything else that might be helpful. Feel free to get in touch and I'll see what I can do to help you out. Hey, thank you so much for tuning in to either the video or the audio replay of our conversation Funding the Dream. I really appreciate you taking the time to dig into this important information, and I really hope that it is helpful to you. On the webpage where you found the link to either the video or the audio for this, you'll find all of those links that I talked about in this session. If there's anything that I missed or anything else that you think I might be able to get you that would be helpful, absolutely feel free to reach out and get in touch with me. My email is youthandfamily, no spaces, no dots, no anything, just all lowercase, youthandfamily@nsPEIdiocese.ca. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks again. I hope you have a lovely day. Bye.